In the far corner of the Orion expanse, space was silent as always. The Empire's deep-range scanners floated in the darkness, watching over thousands of star systems. Every movement, every transmission, every piece of space debris was tracked, logged, and classified. Nothing crossed the Empire's borders without being seen. That was what everyone believed until that night. The shift was almost over when a small red light blinked on a border station console. The operator looked up, tired and half awake. The alarm was soft, almost like a whisper, but it meant something had just crossed the scanner's reach. The reading flashed for only a second and then it was gone. The operator frowned. He replayed the data, thinking it was a system glitch. The object had appeared at impossible speed, faster than any ship known to exist, and then vanished completely. No signal, no code, not even a trace of heat. He checked again. Nothing. The screen showed an empty stretch of space, cold and quiet. He leaned closer, adjusting the controls, but the readings were clean. The system had erased the anomaly as if it never happened. He almost dismissed it, but something about that flash bothered him. Out of habit, he sent the short report up the chain. The message was simple. Unknown object detected. No ID, no signal, possible sensor fault. Then he went back to his routine, not knowing that this single report would throw the entire Empire into panic within hours. A few hours later, similar alerts appeared across 3 more outposts, each on different sides of the sector. Every report said the same thing. A fast-moving object, no identification, no energy trail, gone in seconds. The object seemed to jump from one system to another, crossing distances that should take ships days or weeks to travel, doing it in mere moments. When the High Command saw the combined data, silence filled the control chamber. The first officer replayed the recordings. The flashes appeared too clean, too sharp. They weren't random noise. Something real had passed through Imperial space, and it had done so faster than their sensors could detect. No one wanted to say the word, but everyone thought it. Stealth. Some unknown power had created a new kind of cloaking device, one the Empire had no defense against. Orders went out immediately. Every border array was to be recalibrated, every ship on alert. Long-range interceptors were dispatched to the regions where the object might reappear. For the first time in decades, the Empire's surveillance net had failed, and that alone was enough to make everyone uneasy. Meanwhile, scientists at the Central Observatory dug into the signal fragments. They slowed the footage, analyzed light distortions, and measured gravity ripples. What they found made even the most experienced technicians fall silent. The object was not large, no more than the size of a small freighter, but the gravitational wake it left behind was enormous. It moved as if space itself was bending around it. One engineer whispered that it wasn't moving through space at all, it was skipping through it. When the news reached the Council, they met behind closed doors. The Empire had ruled the galaxy for centuries. Every civilization that challenged its power was crushed or absorbed. The idea that someone or something could simply fly past their defenses was unthinkable. Some believed it might be a test from a rival species. Others thought it was a natural phenomenon. But one question kept echoing through the halls of command. If it's not ours, whose is it? 2 days later, the object appeared again, this time near the fringe of a mining colony. The colony's automatic cameras captured a brief shimmer of light streaking across the sky. Within seconds, all electronics failed, power systems, communication lines, even personal devices went dark. When power returned, every trace of the object was gone, and so was a section of the colony's sensor logs. The files had been wiped clean, as though something had reached in and erased them. That was when panic started spreading. Citizens whispered about invisible ships, unseen invaders, or ghosts of old wars. The Empire's media tried to calm the population, calling it a data storm. But the people who had seen the footage knew better. Something was moving in the dark, faster than anything alive or built. Inside the command center, tension grew. Military officers argued that the object had to be captured or destroyed. Before it reached Imperial territory again, scientists wanted to study it, and the intelligence branch wanted to know who built it. They launched the first pursuit squad, 4 interceptor vessels equipped with the best tracking tech in the galaxy. The pilots locked onto the coordinates of the last sighting and jumped to the location. Space looked empty as usual. Then suddenly one pilot shouted that he had visual contact, a faint blur against the starlight. They increased speed. The blur shifted direction instantly, moving in a way that defied every known law of motion. Their scanners couldn't lock on. The closer they got, the faster it moved. Within seconds, it was gone again. When the ships returned, their data systems were corrupted. The only clear image showed a single frame, a metallic surface reflecting starlight, small and angular, unlike any Imperial craft. The engineers cleaned the image, adjusting the filters. The ship looked human. That discovery sent shockwaves through the fleet. Humanity was an ancient name, almost forgotten. Centuries ago, humans had vanished after a massive conflict, their colonies abandoned, their fleets destroyed or lost. The Empire had long assumed they were extinct or scattered. Yet here was something unmistakably human, its design old but strangely efficient. The Council demanded answers. Could humans have survived in secret, advancing beyond the Empire's technology? If so, where had they been all this time? And why return now in silence? To hide their fear, officials declared the incident classified. All personnel involved were sworn to secrecy. But word spread anyway. Soldiers talk, technicians whisper, and soon half the fleet had heard rumors about a ghost ship that outflew the Empire's fastest vessels. For the operator who had first seen the anomaly, it felt unreal. He replayed that original moment again and again. That tiny red light, that instant of data, had meant something far greater than anyone understood. He realized he hadn't witnessed a system error. He had seen the beginning of something new. Weeks later, reports came from neighboring sectors, brief flashes, short-lived distortions, strange gravitational pulses. The pattern was the same each time. It was like the object was mapping the Empire's borders, testing their response, and each time it left no trace. The Empire's scientists were exhausted, working day and night. They couldn't explain how the ship moved, how it hid, or why it seemed invisible to sensors until it was already gone. They tried comparing it to known warp drives, gravity fields, even theoretical slipstream concepts, but nothing matched. One quiet researcher suggested that maybe the ship wasn't using power the way normal engines did. Maybe it was doing something simpler, something nature itself allowed, but no one had ever noticed. By now, the high command was growing desperate. They couldn't admit weakness, not publicly. To lose control of their own skies would make the Empire look fragile. So they decided to spin a story, claiming the object was an asteroid fragment caught in a magnetic field. But even they didn't believe it. The pattern of movement, the precision, the deliberate direction, it all pointed to intelligence. And deep down, some began to suspect the unthinkable. The humans, once thought extinct, had returned. But they hadn't come with fleets or armies. They had come with something far more terrifying. A ship so advanced that even the Empire's technology couldn't understand it. In a quiet corner of the observatory, one technician stared at the raw data. He zoomed in on the smallest details, the radiation echoes, the time gaps, the spatial warping. Every time the object appeared, it seemed to be milliseconds ahead of where physics said it should be, as if it existed slightly before reality caught up. That thought sent a chill down his spine. He whispered to himself, "It's faster than our detection," and then stopped, because that meant they weren't seeing it arrive. They were seeing it after it had already passed. The realization spread among the researchers like a silent storm. The Empire wasn't tracking the ship. It was watching its shadow. The real vessel was already gone before the sensors even noticed it. That night, the Council gathered again. They debated for hours, arguing about how to respond. Some said they should prepare for war. Others said they should try to communicate. But the oldest member of the Council leaned forward and spoke softly. "If it truly is human," he said, "then we are already too late." No one answered. Outside the window, stars shimmered like distant fireflies, unaware of the fear growing across the Empire. Somewhere out there in the deep dark, a small human vessel moved faster than light, faster than thought, quietly watching, learning, and vanishing again. And for the first time in centuries, the Empire realized that maybe they weren't the masters of the galaxy anymore. Maybe they never were. The Empire had never been so restless. Reports of the strange, fast-moving object had spread far beyond the military. Even though officials tried to keep everything secret, word traveled through whispers, cargo channels, and small space stations. People in mining colonies talked about it like a legend, A ghost ship that appeared from nowhere and vanished before anyone could blink. Inside the command center, however, there was no mystery, only tension. The Empire's pride was built on one belief: that no ship could move faster or hide better than theirs. But this one had done both. It had crossed their borders, ignored their defenses, and made them look powerless. That was unacceptable. A plan was made. This time the Empire would not rely on stationary scanners or slow bureaucracy. They would send out their best, a fleet of interceptors, warships designed for speed and precision. The order was simple: find it, follow it, or destroy it. The fleet was prepared quietly. Every crew was told the same story. They were testing new stealth detection systems. None of them knew the real reason. Only the top command officers knew they were hunting something that had embarrassed the entire Empire. For 2 days, the ships waited in silence. Every sensor was active, every pilot alert. The object had last been seen near the edge of a gas cluster, an area filled with magnetic storms and drifting debris. The perfect place for something to hide. And then, just when everyone thought it wouldn't appear, the alert came again, a soft beep, a flicker on the radar, one blip of light that lasted less than a second, and then it was gone. But this time they were ready. The interceptors jumped instantly, locking onto the coordinates. As they dropped out of hyperspace, they saw it, a faint shimmer cutting across the darkness like a shadow. For a heartbeat, no one moved. It was too small to be a warship, but too fast to be debris. It glowed faintly, silver and blue like starlight caught in motion. The lead pilot opened communication. "Unknown vessel, identify yourself." No answer. "Unknown vessel, this is Imperial space. You are required to stop immediately." Still nothing. The shimmer moved again, not away but through them. In an instant, it was behind their formation. The pilots gasped as warning lights exploded across their consoles. Systems were overloaded, sensors scrambled. The unknown ship hadn't fired a single shot. It had simply passed by, and their instruments reacted as if hit by a wave of pure energy. When they regained control, the object was gone. The entire encounter had lasted only 5 seconds. Back at command, the data review was chaotic. Every recording had fragments missing. The timestamps were wrong. In one file, the same second appeared 3 times, as if the event had bent the clock itself. Still, one frame survived. The engineers studied it in silence. The object was clearer now, metallic with smooth lines and no visible engines. Its surface looked old but not damaged. Some parts even looked familiar, like the designs found in ancient human ship blueprints stored deep in the archives. The scientists ran comparisons, and the results shocked them. The structure matched old human spacecraft designs from before the Empire's rise, centuries-old blueprints thought to be primitive. Yet this primitive design had just outrun their most advanced fleet. One researcher, his voice quiet but trembling, said what everyone was thinking. "It's human." That single word changed everything. Meetings followed. Endless debates. Some said it was impossible. Humans couldn't have survived this long, not after their colonies were wiped out in the Great Collapse. Others argued that maybe they had escaped farther than anyone believed, beyond mapped space evolving in secret. The council ordered silence. Every record of the event was locked under the highest classification. But locking files couldn't stop fear. Across the Empire, something had shifted. People no longer felt untouchable. If humans, the old underestimated species, had returned with technology no one understood, what else were they capable of? Meanwhile, in the cold edges of space, the pursuit continued. The Empire doubled the fleet. Scanners were recalibrated, quantum detectors activated, and ships equipped with experimental tracking fields. They believed that with enough data they could predict where the object would appear next. For weeks, nothing happened. The fleet drifted in darkness, engines quiet, sensors humming. Then one night it appeared again, a sharp reading. A flash, coordinates streamed across the monitors. The object had just entered a nebula system, a dangerous region filled with electrical storms and radiation bursts. Perfect for an ambush. The Empire didn't hesitate. The fleet moved in fast, surrounding the area. Inside the glowing clouds, visibility dropped to almost zero. Lightning danced through the mist, lighting up the hulls in eerie colors. The ship captains waited, fingers ready on the controls. Then, a sudden ripple. Like space itself had folded. The object was there. It appeared less than a kilometer from the nearest warship. Its hull gleamed faintly under the lightning, sleek and silent. No lights, no weapons visible. Just a shape that seemed alive. The Imperial ship fired a warning pulse. The beam hit the object and then passed right through it, bending like water. Before anyone could react, the object vanished again, leaving behind a wave of distorted gravity that rocked the fleet violently. Alarms screamed. 2 smaller ships spun out of formation, their engines short-circuited. Pilots shouted into radios trying to stabilize. The readings showed nothing now, not even an energy trail. The object was gone. Again. But this time the Empire noticed something new. In the moments after the disappearance, a small signal flickered through the static. Not a code, not a distress call, and just a few digital pulses. When decoded, it formed an ancient communication pattern, one that matched early human transmission formats. It was like a signature, subtle, deliberate, and unmistakably human. The Council was in disbelief. "They're taunting us," one of them said. But deep down, they all knew it wasn't arrogance. It was a message the humans weren't hiding. They were showing that they could appear anywhere, anytime, and the Empire wouldn't be able to stop them. Over the next few days, the Empire's scientists worked without rest. They replayed every signal, every distortion, searching for a weakness. Yet nothing made sense. The object didn't follow normal physics. It didn't emit heat, light, or any known propulsion signature. It didn't even seem to move through space. It slipped through it, as if taking shortcuts no one else could see. A theory began to form. Quiet, unbelievable, but the only one that fit. The ship wasn't traveling faster than light. It was moving between moments of time itself. If that was true, then no fleet could ever catch it. The realization spread through the top levels of the Empire like a cold wind. Their most powerful weapons, their fastest ships, all useless against something that didn't obey time the same way. And yet, the humans hadn't attacked. They hadn't demanded anything. They had simply appeared, let the Empire see them, and disappeared again. It was like they were testing, observing, maybe even reminding the galaxy that they still existed. For the officers who had chased the object, the feeling was mixed. Fear and fascination. They couldn't forget the sight of it gliding effortlessly through storms, the way it bent light around its hull. Some said it looked beautiful, almost peaceful, like a creation too advanced to be meant for war. One pilot, speaking in a private debriefing, said quietly, "It wasn't trying to escape. It was just moving like we weren't even there." That sentence haunted the commanders for weeks. If humans could build something that ignored the Empire's entire defense network, it meant the power balance of the galaxy was changing, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. The Empire tried to cover it up again. The official reports called it sensor illusions caused by spatial storms. But even as they lied to their own citizens, they sent out more fleets, more probes, more scientists. They couldn't stop searching. The unknown had always terrified empires, and this one was no different. Late one night, the operator who had first seen the object sat alone at his console again. He replayed the earliest recordings, the very first red flash. As he stared at the screen, something unexpected happened. A faint signal, so weak it barely registered. It wasn't random. It was a pattern, the same rhythm as the pulses found near the nebula. He isolated it, amplified it, and listened. The message was short, only 4 words. But they froze him in place. "Stop following. Not hostile." His heart pounded. He checked the coordinates. The signal had come from deep beyond the Empire's mapped edge, far beyond their reach. He didn't report it. He just sat there staring at the quiet screen, wondering what kind of beings humans had become to send such a calm message to an empire that once ruled over them. Out there in the black sea of stars, the human ship continued its silent journey, unseen but always one step ahead. The Empire's fleets kept searching, scanning, chasing. But deep down, every pilot knew the truth. They weren't the hunters anymore. They were the ones being watched, and the humans, they had returned not with warships or demands, but with something the Empire couldn't understand. Quiet power. Something faster than detection. Something that made the strongest empire in the galaxy feel small for the first time in history. After the last encounter, the Empire was in complete confusion. No one had seen the strange ship again, but its presence could be felt everywhere. Every station, every command room, every officer had the same uneasy thought, that somewhere in the dark, the humans were still watching. The council met every day now, behind sealed doors. The halls of the high command were filled with tension. There were rumors that several admirals had resigned after seeing the recordings. They couldn't accept that something so small, so silent, had humiliated the most powerful force in the galaxy. And yet, the more they tried to understand it, the stranger it became. One night, a researcher from the Imperial Archives came forward. He had been studying old historical files, long forgotten by most of the Empire. In dusty digital records, he found fragments about an ancient human project, something called the Gravity Path Initiative. It was said to be a propulsion experiment from the early days of space travel, before humanity vanished from the galactic map. The Empire had always dismissed those records as myths. The files spoke about bending gravity itself, using natural fields instead of engines. No one believed it was possible. But when the researcher compared the old data to the readings from the mysterious ship, they matched perfectly. It was as if the humans had taken that forgotten theory and made it real. The discovery was immediately classified. Only a few members of the High Council were told. They didn't want the rest of the Empire to know that the humans had achieved something their own scientists couldn't even explain. The Council ordered the research sealed under a new security level, higher than even military protocols. The message was clear. This never happened. But secrets have a way of leaking even in an empire. The technicians who analyzed the signal, the soldiers who saw the ship, the engineers who cleaned the data, they all whispered when no one was watching. And the whispers spread. Soon even the lowest-ranked worker on a mining ship had heard the rumor. Humans, they said. They're back. In the following weeks, a quiet panic moved through the Empire's population. People didn't talk about it in public, but they felt it. The Empire had always claimed to control everything: trade, travel, science, war. But now something existed beyond their control, something they couldn't even see. The military doubled patrols. Fleets were ordered to remain near the core systems. But deep inside, everyone knew. It didn't matter how many ships they sent. You couldn't chase what you couldn't detect. The Imperial scientists kept working, though. They replayed the recordings again and again, hoping to understand how the human ship moved. Some believed it used hidden wormholes. Others thought it folded time itself. One group even suggested that the ship wasn't flying through space at all. It was simply skipping across reality, like a stone bouncing across water. They tried to copy it, of course. The Empire never liked the idea of being second to anyone. They rebuilt fragments of the energy signature, trying to recreate it in a lab. But every test failed, the engines overheated, the power cores melted, and one experiment ended in an explosion so strong it destroyed an entire testing station. After that, the Council ordered all experiments stopped. Still behind the scenes, a few scientists refused to give up. They wanted to know how the humans had done it. To them, it wasn't just science, Bon, it was pride. One of the older researchers, a quiet man who had worked for the Empire his whole life, started connecting the dots. He noticed that the human ship's movement always followed a pattern. It appeared near strong gravity fields, stars, black holes, or massive gas giants. It didn't fight gravity, it used it. It rode gravity like a wave. That realization changed everything. The humans hadn't broken the laws of physics, and they had learned how to use them better. When this theory reached the Council, there was silence in the chamber. For the first time, the Empire realized how far behind they really were. The Emperor himself, silent for most of the discussion, finally spoke. If they have mastered gravity, he said slowly, then they can go anywhere. Even here, the words echoed in the room. No one dared to answer. After that meeting, new orders went out. Every record of human history was to be reviewed, rewritten, and hidden. The Empire didn't want anyone to remember that once, long ago, humans had been underestimated. But history has a memory of its own. While the Empire worked in fear, others began to feel something different. Hope. Small independent colonies, ones long ignored or ruled harshly by the Empire, started talking about the humans with quiet admiration. If they returned, people said, maybe they'll bring balance again. The Empire heard these whispers and grew even more paranoid. They sent inspectors to those colonies, confiscated communication devices, and punished anyone caught spreading false stories. But the truth couldn't be erased so easily. One day, an encrypted message appeared inside the Imperial communication grid. It wasn't sent by anyone in the system. It came from deep space, from a location far beyond known travel routes. The message contained no coordinates, no sender ID, and no traceable signal. It was just one sentence. "Stop searching. You're not ready." The message vanished seconds later, leaving no data behind. The council went into emergency session. Some called it a threat. Others thought it was a warning. But no one could deny that the humans were not just advanced. They were aware of everything the Empire was doing. The message spread quietly among the upper ranks. Officers stopped sleeping well. Commanders grew cautious. For the first time in history, the Empire's leaders began to feel small, like children who had just realized someone far older was watching them. Meanwhile, deep within the Imperial archives, the same old researcher kept reading those ancient human files. He found stories about Earth, a planet now lost to memory. It was small, fragile, and full of life. Its people had struggled, fought wars, and yet always found a way forward. The files described them as stubborn, curious, and endlessly creative. He couldn't stop thinking about it. Maybe the humans hadn't disappeared because they were destroyed. Maybe they had just outgrown the galaxy that once tried to control them. Outside, fleets still searched the stars, chasing shadows. Every few weeks, someone claimed to see another glimpse, a silver blur across a scanner, a faint distortion in deep space. The reports were never confirmed, but they always felt real. One pilot described it perfectly. It didn't move fast because it wanted to escape. It moved fast because it didn't belong here anymore. Those words spread quietly among the crew. They began to see the humans not as enemies, but as something beyond them. Travelers who had found a higher way to exist. But the Empire couldn't think that way. To them, control was everything. So they erased the files again, destroyed the evidence, and silenced anyone who asked too many questions. Yet even as they buried the truth, small things kept happening. Sensors would pick up short flashes. Gravity readings would change for a second, or quiet signals would hum through the background static. Every time it happened, the Empire's scientists would look at each other and know they were back. The more they tried to hide it, the more obvious it became. The humans weren't gone. They were watching, learning, and waiting. One night, the old researcher stood at his station, staring out the observation window. The stars stretched endlessly in front of him. He thought about all the things the Empire had built: cities, fleets, weapons, and yet none of it could match one quiet ship that didn't even need to fight. He smiled faintly, whispering to himself, "They've gone where we can't follow." That night, a report came in. A new detection, faint, brief, and unexplainable. But this one was different. It wasn't near the Empire's borders. It was right above the Imperial capital itself. For just 1 second, the sky lit up, a thin, silent streak of light passing overhead, faster than thought, leaving behind a soft blue trail that faded into the night. The Empire panicked, activating every defense system. But there was nothing to shoot at, nothing to chase. The ship was already gone. On the ground, millions looked up, watching that blue line fade across the stars. Some were afraid. Some were amazed, and somewhere deep inside the Empire's command center, a single message appeared on the screen. Quiet, calm, and simple. "We are not your enemy. Learn before you fall." Then the message disappeared. After that night, the council met one final time. The Emperor ordered that no one was to pursue the humans again. They weren't to be tracked, fought, or studied. "Let them go," he said. "If they wanted war, we would already be gone." It was the first wise decision the Empire had made in generations, and though no one would admit it, the Empire's people began to look toward the stars differently after that. They no longer saw themselves as the masters of the galaxy, but as one small part of something much larger, something that had just reminded them what true power really looked like. Because in the silence of space, beyond reach and reason, humans had returned, not to rule, not to conquer, but to remind the universe. They were never truly gone. The Empire had spent weeks tracing every faint echo left behind by that mysterious object. Countless ships, satellites, and scanning drones worked day and night, yet no one could fully understand what they were chasing. It had no name, no transponder signal, and no heat signature to identify. It didn't even follow the known physics of motion. It came and went as if time and gravity meant nothing to it. But finally, one patrol team, stationed at the edge of the frontier zone, detected something. A faint disturbance in the void. It was like a small ripple in space, a pulse that matched the unknown object's previous trail. They followed the trail cautiously, unsure of what they might find. The commanding officer ordered all systems to run silent. No light, no radio chatter, just pure stealth. The crew sat in silence, watching the blackness of space, their hearts pounding. Suddenly, their sensors picked up a metallic reflection drifting through the darkness. It was small, too small to be a warship. The closer they got, the more confused they became. It wasn't alien in design. It was simple, clean, and oddly familiar. When they magnified the image, the crew could hardly believe their eyes. On the side of the ship, faint and weathered by time, were markings, letters written in an ancient human language. They zoomed in further and saw it clearly, an Earth insignia. The crew exchanged stunned glances. No one had seen an Earth-made vessel in centuries. Humans were barely known to the Empire anymore, their existence treated as myth, a forgotten part of history. Yet here was proof. A ship built by human hands flying through the most guarded sector of the Empire without permission, without even trying to hide. The patrol hailed the ship. For a few moments there was nothing but static. Then a calm voice replied. It wasn't panicked or aggressive, just composed. Field test complete, the voice said. Apologies for the interference. The Empire's commander demanded identification, but the voice only responded with a quiet laugh. We didn't know your sensors were so sensitive, it said. We'll adjust next time. Then the signal cut off. The patrol's crew was left speechless. They had seen a ship that moved faster than light, one that left no trace, no engine output, nothing. And now it was confirmed humans were behind it. They immediately sent the footage to Imperial Command, expecting commendation. Instead, they were met with silence. Hours later, a command ship arrived and the patrol team was escorted away for debriefing. Their vessel was seized and every record of the incident was locked under top clearance. The Empire didn't want anyone talking about what they'd seen. Inside the Imperial Command Center, high-ranking officials replayed the footage over and over. The hull design was basic, like something from the early human space age. Yet the technology inside it was clearly far beyond anything the Empire had ever created. One scientist whispered what everyone feared to admit. This should not be possible. The chief of research demanded to know how such an old-looking ship could move faster than their most advanced fleet. None of the experts had answers. Every reading contradicted the known laws of propulsion. To investigate further, the Empire tried to replicate the human ship's path, sending probes along the same energy route. But one after another, the probes malfunctioned, losing all data and vanishing without a trace. It was as if the very fabric of space around the human trail rejected imitation. Meanwhile, deep in the research wing of the Empire, old archives were opened. Files long considered irrelevant, ancient Earth data, pre-galactic records, were examined line by line. Among them, they found something strange. Theories from early human scientists about manipulating gravity and bending space-time using natural resonance instead of force. It was a forgotten concept discarded as fiction long ago, but the patterns in those old papers matched the energy readings from the mysterious ship. That discovery sent chills through the Imperial Council. It meant humans hadn't stumbled upon something new. They had built it themselves, likely based on principles they'd developed ages ago. The Empire realized that the humans might not have disappeared at all. Maybe they had simply gone further, evolved faster, and left the rest of the galaxy behind. As the investigation deepened, another event shocked everyone. A new object appeared briefly near a military outpost, this time moving slower, almost intentionally. The crew could see it clearly through their viewports. The same Earth insignia shimmered under starlight. Then a voice came through the intercom again. "Don't be alarmed," it said. "We're just observing." There was no hostility, no aggression, just a quiet tone as if they were speaking to an old friend. When the Empire demanded their identity once more, the human voice simply replied, "We go where we must. You wouldn't understand yet." And just like before, the ship disappeared. The Empire's leaders couldn't decide whether to be afraid or curious. They called an emergency session of the High Council. Some believed it was an illusion, a trick to disrupt the Empire's order. Others warned that humans might have achieved something the Empire couldn't control. One commander said, "If they can outrun our sensors, they can destroy us before we even notice." Another, quieter voice replied, "If they wanted to, they already would have." That thought silenced the room. It became clear that the humans weren't attacking, they were testing, watching, measuring, and that realization was somehow even more unsettling. Later, one of the captured patrol crew members was quietly released after questioning. He spoke little of what he saw, but he told his colleagues one thing that spread through the Empire like a whisper. They weren't scared of us. Not even a little. From that day on, every Imperial fleet patrolling the outer systems carried orders to stay alert for unidentified objects, but not to engage. Instead, they were to observe and record. The Empire's pride was wounded. Their sense of dominance shattered. The idea that a species once considered primitive could outmatch their greatest technologies was unthinkable. But deep inside, a quiet sense of respect grew among the lower officers. Stories of humanity's return spread in secret channels. Stories about the silent ships that came and went like ghosts. About humans who spoke calmly to the mightiest empire in the galaxy. And about how they carried themselves not with arrogance, but with quiet confidence. The Empire didn't know where those humans came from, or how they achieved such mastery of speed and stealth. But one thing was clear, the humans were not hiding. They were exploring, testing, and perhaps even observing how far the galaxy had progressed without them. The Empire could only wonder, if this was a single ship, what else was out there? In the months that followed, strange energy traces began appearing across distant systems, always short, always vanishing before anyone could get close. The same pattern repeated every time, no heat, no light, no trail. Some thought it was the same ship, others believed it was many. But in every case, the Empire arrived too late. Whispers spread through the ranks that the humans were back, and this time, they had gone far beyond what anyone thought possible. No one knew what they wanted, but one thing was certain. The galaxy was no longer as big or as safe as the Empire once believed. The High Council, desperate to maintain order, tried to cover the truth. But secrets have a way of slipping through the cracks. Soon pilots and engineers began to hope instead of fear. They wondered if maybe one day they too could see what the humans had seen, cross the impossible barrier, travel faster than thought, and prove that even in a galaxy ruled by empires, human potential still had no limits. Because the humans hadn't returned as conquerors. They had returned as something far more powerful. Proof that no matter how much time passes, the spark of curiosity and determination never dies. And somewhere out there, beyond the reach of sensors, that small human ship kept moving silently and freely across the stars. The weeks after the encounter were full of silence and unease across the galactic empire. No one spoke openly about the mysterious human ship, but everyone knew it had shaken the entire command structure. For the first time in centuries, the Empire's perfect control didn't feel so perfect anymore. Their fleets were powerful, their weapons unmatched. But what good was all that when they couldn't even detect something right in front of them? The High Council called it an anomaly, but the soldiers and scientists knew better. It wasn't an error, it was proof that someone somewhere had surpassed them. And that someone was human. Inside the Empire's central research facility, teams of engineers and scientists worked day and night, trying to understand what had happened. They had the sensor data, the visual recordings, and even the faint energy readings left behind when the human ship vanished. But no matter how many simulations they ran, they couldn't reproduce it. The energy patterns made no sense. Every test ship they built either broke apart or disappeared entirely when they tried to copy the propulsion method. One scientist described it perfectly during a report. It's like trying to catch smoke with your hands. The harder we try, the less we understand. The Empire's leaders were growing desperate. Their confidence, the belief that they were the most advanced civilization in the galaxy, was beginning to crumble. They had ruled for thousands of years by controlling technology and information. But now there was something they couldn't explain or contain. Meetings became tense. Military commanders blamed scientists for being too slow. Scientists blamed the government for keeping them in the dark. And underneath it all, a quiet fear began to spread. If one human ship could outrun them, how many others were out there? The Empire deployed countless patrols across the border sectors, hoping to find more traces of the mysterious humans. But every time they thought they had found something, it was gone before they arrived. It was almost as if the humans were watching them, studying their reactions. Then one day a strange thing happened. A small Imperial fleet was returning from patrol when their communication system flickered. Static filled the cabin and a message appeared on their main screen. It wasn't encrypted and it wasn't a distress call. It was a short sentence written in an old Earth language. "Don't chase shadows." The crew froze. No one could figure out where the message came from. It wasn't transmitted through normal channels, and their ship's sensors didn't detect any nearby vessel. When they checked the space around them, it was completely empty. Whatever had sent the message had done it without leaving a single trace. When the fleet returned to base and reported the incident, the Council dismissed it as a prank. But the lower-ranking officers weren't so sure. The message had felt intentional. It was as if the humans were warning them not to waste their time. As weeks turned into months, the tension grew worse. The Empire tried everything: new scanning arrays, faster interceptors, even experimental warp detectors, but nothing worked. Every attempt to locate the humans ended in failure. Some scientists began to think the humans weren't using faster engines at all. Maybe they were using something entirely different, something that didn't move through space but around it. A few even whispered theories about bending reality itself, creating shortcuts that bypassed the limits of light. But those ideas were dismissed as impossible. The Empire couldn't accept that a species once considered primitive had achieved something they could not. But while the upper ranks argued, the truth was spreading quietly among the people. Stories about the invisible ships were being told in trade stations, mining colonies, and even academy dorms. Pilots claimed to have seen strange lights darting across the void, too fast for any known vessel. Some said they heard voices in the static of their radios, calm and human, saying things like, "We see you," or "Still watching." The Empire tried to silence these rumors, but the more they denied it, the more people believed. Behind closed doors, the Emperor himself demanded results. He didn't care how much it cost. He wanted proof that the Empire was still the greatest power in the galaxy. He ordered the construction of a new type of warship, larger, faster, and more advanced than anything before. It would be their response to humanity's silent challenge, but building it was a disaster. The engineers tried to copy what little they knew of the human propulsion readings. Within days, several ships exploded during testing. The energy levels were simply too unstable. The Emperor's pride turned into paranoia. He began suspecting that spies were among them, perhaps even humans disguised as Imperial citizens. Arrests began quietly. Researchers disappeared. Fear became part of everyday life. One officer who had once seen the human ship with his own eyes said something that echoed through the ranks. "They don't need to fight us. They've already won by making us afraid of ourselves." And he was right. The Empire was changing, not because of war, but because of fear. They began isolating their colonies, shutting down exploration programs and focusing only on defense. The once proud fleets that roamed freely now stayed close to home, afraid of running into something they couldn't understand. Meanwhile, the sightings continued. In remote sectors, small outposts would occasionally report a flash of light or a distortion on the edge of their sensors. Some claimed to have seen a silhouette, a ship, small and sleek, with markings of old Earth on its hull. But before they could confirm it, it would vanish again, leaving only questions. A few brave officers suggested trying to make contact instead of chasing the humans. "Maybe they're not enemies," one argued during a council meeting. "Maybe they're just seeing how far we've come." But the Empire's pride wouldn't allow it. They couldn't admit weakness. They couldn't risk appearing small in front of their own citizens, and so the humans remained a mystery. Ghosts of the galaxy that no one could touch. But the people remembered. Across the Empire, whispers grew louder. Some began to admire these unseen travelers. They started saying things like, "The humans are free," or "They go where even the Empire can't." For the first time in history, the citizens began to question whether the Empire truly ruled the stars. Even within the military, quiet admiration spread. Pilots painted tiny Earth symbols on their ships as good luck charms. Engineers studied old human science logs, trying to learn from them. What had started as fear was slowly turning into respect. Then one evening, an old transmission was found in the archives. It had been buried deep within classified files from a century ago. It showed early humans talking about exploration. Not conquest, not domination, but curiosity. "We go because we must know," the old recording said. Because the unknown calls us. The scientists who found it played it again and again, realizing that the humans' strength didn't come from their ships or technology. It came from their mindset. They weren't afraid to go beyond what others called impossible. That realization spread quietly through the Empire's younger generation. They began to dream again, not of control but of discovery. And though the Council still denied everything, something had changed forever. Because deep down everyone knew that out there, somewhere beyond their sensors, the humans were still traveling. Still exploring, still proving that curiosity and courage could outpace even the greatest empires. And as one technician whispered late one night while staring out at the stars, maybe they didn't vanish. Maybe they just outgrew us. No one answered him, but everyone felt the same quiet truth. The humans hadn't come back to start a war. They had come back as a reminder that the universe wasn't made to be owned or controlled. It was meant to be explored. And for the first time in thousands of years, the Empire began to realize that being the strongest didn't mean being the fastest or the biggest. It meant having the heart to keep going, even when no one else dared. Somewhere in the far darkness, a faint distortion of light passed across a quiet star system. No sound, no signal, just a ripple of motion faster than any machine could track. A few seconds later, the space returned to silence, but those who had seen it smiled softly, knowing exactly what it was. The humans were still out there, and they were not slowing down. Months had passed since the last sighting. The Empire's scientists had given up trying to track or understand the human ships. Every experiment had failed, and every attempt to replicate their propulsion system ended in disaster. What had once been a confident empire now lived in quiet uncertainty. Their fleet still patrolled the stars. Their leaders still gave speeches of strength, but behind the polished walls, everyone knew the truth. The balance of power in the galaxy had changed forever. The humans were out there somewhere, unseen but always felt. Their silence spoke louder than any weapon. It wasn't the kind of silence born from fear. It was calm, like they didn't need to prove anything anymore. And that calmness terrified the Empire more than any threat ever could. Then, one quiet night cycle, the Empire's central communication network suddenly flickered. Alarms went off as the system picked up an incoming signal. At first, the technicians thought it was an attack. The signal came without a source, without coordinates, without any trace of origin. But when they opened the transmission, everyone in the control room froze. The message wasn't encrypted, wasn't hidden, and wasn't even long. It was written in simple, clear words using the universal translation system. The message read, "We weren't trying to hide. You just weren't fast enough." For several seconds, the room was silent. Then whispers spread among the crew. Some laughed nervously, others looked pale. The message disappeared as quickly as it came, leaving no trace behind. The communications officer tried to locate the source, but the system showed something impossible. The signal had come from every direction at once, as if it existed everywhere and nowhere. When the message reached the Imperial Council, there was chaos. Some called it a declaration of superiority. Others thought it was a warning. But a few, the ones who truly understood what they were facing, realized something deeper. It wasn't arrogance, it was fact. The humans weren't mocking them. They were simply telling the truth. The Empire had spent centuries believing they were the center of progress, the peak of science and control. But now that illusion had been shattered. The humans had gone so far beyond them that the Empire's most advanced systems couldn't even register their presence properly. And that realization spread like wildfire. Word of the mysterious message leaked out. Despite the Empire's best attempts to hide it, fragments of the story reached citizens, pilots, and even outlying colonies. People began to talk again about the humans, not as myths, not as enemies, but as something greater. They became a symbol, a reminder of what true curiosity and courage could achieve. In the far edges of the galaxy, star miners and traders began saying a new phrase when passing through unknown space. "May the humans watch over us." It wasn't fear or worship. It was respect. The humans had shown them what freedom really meant. To move through the stars without fear, without the need for control, without permission. Inside the Imperial Academy, young cadets began studying old human science archives. They read about Earth's history, how humans once faced impossible odds from wars to extinction threats, yet always found a way to adapt. One instructor quietly said to his students, "You can conquer worlds, but you can't conquer the human spirit." That line spread through the ranks, whispered by pilots before takeoff, repeated by explorers heading into deep space. The Empire had tried to erase the humans from history, but now they were becoming legends once again. In the Emperor's chamber, a meeting was held in secrecy. The highest-ranking officials debated what to do. Some wanted to pursue the humans to find out where they came from. Others said it was useless, that if the humans didn't want to be found, they never would. Finally, the Emperor himself spoke softly, breaking the tension. "If they wished us harm," he said, "we would already be gone." The room fell silent. Everyone knew he was right, and so the Empire changed its stance. No more hunts, no more fear. Instead, they began to focus inward, to rebuild what they had lost, their sense of wonder. Scientists were encouraged to explore again, not to copy or control, but to learn. Pilots were allowed to travel further than before into unknown regions, driven by curiosity rather than conquest. But deep down, everyone knew that the humans were still watching, unseen, but present. Every once in a while, a report would surface of a faint light darting past a fleet, or a strange signal lasting only a second. Whenever that happened, the old whispers would rise again. "They're still here." One mining vessel in the outer rim reported seeing something extraordinary. The crew described a shimmering outline, a small ship, almost invisible, passing silently through the asteroid field. It didn't threaten or communicate. It simply drifted by as if observing. One of the crew members said later, "I swear I saw the mark of Earth on its side." The Empire didn't confirm it. They never did, but the story spread like fire across the galaxy. People told it in bars, in spaceports, and quiet corners of research labs. It became part of a larger belief that the humans were out there, guardians of the unknown, moving beyond time and limitation. Years later, one of the Empire's greatest scientists retired and wrote a personal note that became famous across worlds. It said, "We once believed the humans vanished, but perhaps they never left. Perhaps they simply evolved past the need to be seen." That idea stuck with everyone who read it. It changed how people viewed exploration. It reminded them that technology wasn't everything, that curiosity, courage, and persistence mattered more than power or control. Even the Empire's ships began to carry small symbols painted near their engines, a tribute to the humans. Not as a challenge, but as a quiet acknowledgement of the truth. Humans had done what no empire ever could. They had gone beyond the edge of understanding. And somewhere, in the deep dark beyond the reach of any radar or telescope, that same human ship drifted silently. Its crew looked out into the endless void, watching stars pass by in streams of light. To them, the Empire wasn't an enemy, just another civilization trying to find its place, just as humanity once did long ago. One of them looked at the distant galaxy behind them and said softly, "They'll catch up one day." The other smiled. The ship's engines flared, not with fire or sound, but with pure, silent light. In a blink, it vanished, faster than thought, beyond the limits of time and distance. Back in the Empire's control center, a single technician saw a brief flicker on his monitor, a reading so faint that the system almost ignored it. For a split second, he caught a glimpse of a bright trail across the stars, and then it was gone. He stared at it for a long moment, then whispered under his breath, "They were here." No one else saw it. No one else would believe it. But deep in his heart, he knew the truth. The humans were not gone. They had simply moved beyond the reach of any empire, any limit, any fear. And from that day on, whenever anyone in the galaxy looked up at the stars, they couldn't help but wonder if somewhere out there, a human ship was passing by, and unseen, unstoppable, and free. The Empire learned something that night, something far more valuable than power or control. They learned that greatness wasn't about ruling others. It was about daring to go where no one else could, and that is what made the humans truly invincible.